The next morning, Mira woke up early with a feeling of quiet excitement. She had slept peacefully, and the image of the old house stayed in her mind like a soft light. She prepared her breakfast quickly and packed a small bag with cleaning cloths, a notebook, a bottle of water, and an old brush she had kept for years. She wanted to spend the whole day in the house and learn more about its hidden corners. As she walked toward the house, the fresh morning air filled her lungs. Birds sang on the tall tree near the road. The town was still calm. Only a few people were outside, sweeping their porches or opening their shops. When Mira passed them, they smiled politely, and she smiled back. Some whispered to each other again, wondering why she cared so much about the ruined house. But Mira was used to their doubt by now. Their whispers no longer bothered her. She felt something deeper guiding her decisions. When she reached the house, she unlocked the old door and stepped inside. The interior still looked tired, but it also looked a little better than the day before. The sunlight entered through the newly cleaned windows and made small bright spots on the wooden floor. Mira felt a quiet satisfaction. She believed that even small improvements had their own beauty. She started her work by sweeping the garden path outside. The garden was covered with dry leaves and tangled plants, but she could see the shape of the old stone path hidden under the mess. She moved slowly and carefully, lifting each part of the garden that had been forgotten. With each sweep, the garden looked a little more alive. After an hour, she went inside to begin cleaning the bedroom she had visited the previous day. The dusty furniture stood silently, as if waiting for someone to touch it again. She moved the small bed to the corner and wiped its wooden frame. The wood was strong, even though it was old. She cleaned the table near the window and found patterns carved into its surface. The carvings were simple curves and lines, but they showed that someone once took the time to decorate it. When she opened the window in that room, a soft breeze entered. The curtains lifted slightly, and light spread across the room. Mira felt like the house was slowly waking up after a deep sleep. She liked this feeling. She felt peaceful working here. She remembered the locked chest in the second bedroom. She walked toward it and knelt down. The chest was small and made of dark wood, with thin metal lines running along its edges. It was covered with dust, but it looked sturdy. Mira placed her hand on the lid and wondered who had kept it here. She wondered what story it held. She pulled gently on the lock again, but it did not open. So she left it for later, deciding that she would find a way to unlock it without breaking it. She believed that the chest held something meaningful because it was the only item left in the otherwise empty room. After finishing some basic cleaning, Mira sat down near the living room window. She took out her notebook and wrote down all the tasks she wanted to complete that week. She liked planning her steps. It helped her stay calm and organized. She wrote about fixing the kitchen sink, repairing the uneven floor, repainting the walls, and cleaning the hidden corners. As she wrote, she heard a slight sound behind her. It was a soft tap like something small falling. She turned around slowly. At first, she did not see anything unusual. Then she noticed a thin line on one part of the wall. It looked like a small crack, but not a fresh one. The wall looked old and layered. Mira walked closer and touched it gently. To her surprise, the wall felt slightly loose, as if something was behind it. She tapped it again with her knuckles, and the sound was hollow. Her curiosity grew. She pressed her palm against the loose plank and pushed lightly. The plank moved a little. She pressed again, and this time it shifted more. After a moment, the plank slid out, and Mira found a small gap in the wall. Inside the gap was a wooden box covered in dust. It was thin and long, with delicate patterns carved on the top. Mira gently lifted it out and placed it on the floor. Her hands trembled slightly, not with fear, but with the excitement of discovery. The box looked very old, but it was in good condition. She opened the lid carefully. Inside, she found several folded papers tied with a thin cloth ribbon. The papers looked delicate, but the writing on them was still clear and neat. They were letters. Mira untied the ribbon and opened the first letter. The handwriting was elegant and steady. The letter began with a warm greeting from someone named Arun. Mira felt a soft connection to the name. It was simple and full of kindness. As she read, she realized that the letter was written to someone named Leela. The writer described daily life in the house, moments shared in the garden, small celebrations, and dreams for the future. The tone of the letter was gentle, filled with appreciation for simple joys. Mira felt her heart grow warm as she read each word. She continued reading the rest of the letters. Each one revealed a little more about Arun and Lila. They were a couple who once lived in the house long ago. They had filled it with love and hope. They dreamed of creating a home filled with laughter and warmth. They wrote about planting flowers in the garden, repairing the walls together, and spending evenings by the window reading stories. Mira felt the house become more alive with every letter she read. She imagined Arun sitting at the table writing with care. She imagined Lila placing the letters inside the wooden box and hiding it safely. She imagined the house full of quiet joy. After reading all the letters, Mira closed the box and held it gently. She felt as if she had discovered a piece of the house's heart. The letters were not dramatic or loud. They were simple and filled with soft emotions, just like the house itself. She placed the box on the window shelf and looked around the room. She realized the house had stories that no one in the town knew anymore. People laughed at her for buying a ruined house, but they did not know the life that had existed here. Mira felt grateful to learn about it. She felt like she had been trusted with something precious. The rest of the day passed in slow, quiet work. She cleaned the hallway and removed old cobwebs from the corners. She scrubbed the kitchen counters and washed the windows until they shined. While cleaning, she often paused to think about the letters. She wondered what had happened to the people who once lived here. She wondered why the house had been left empty for so long. She wondered if the chest in the bedroom was connected to the letters in the afternoon. Rena, her close friend, came to visit. Rena walked in with a look of surprise. She noticed the difference immediately. The house looked brighter and more open than before. She had expected it to still look dark and dusty, but now it felt lighter. Rena walked through the living room and said that Mira had done a lot of work already. She looked curious but still doubtful. Mira showed her the wooden box and the letters. Rena listened quietly as Mira talked about Arun and Leela. When she held one of the letters, she smiled softly. She said the writing was beautiful and the story of the couple was touching. She admitted that the house felt different now. It felt warmer. They talked for a while, and Rena helped Mira clean the kitchen shelves. The two friends worked together quietly, sharing small comments and gentle laughter. The house echoed with soft sounds again. Mira felt grateful for Rena's company. After Rena left, the sun began to lower in the sky. Mira walked to the back of the house and opened the old wooden door that led to a narrow space behind the kitchen. It looked like a small storage area. She swept the floor and found a broken lamp in a dusty basket. The space was not very interesting, but it felt important to clean every part of the house. She wanted to give the house new energy. As the sky turned orange and pink, Myra stood in the living room again. She looked around at the place she had cleaned. It still needed a lot of work, but it felt different. It felt like the house was responding to her care. It felt like the walls were breathing again. She walked toward the letters once more and read a few lines again. The warm words reminded her that this house had seen gentle moments in the past. She wanted to bring that warmth back. She closed the window slowly and locked the door. When she stepped outside, she turned to look at the house from the garden. The evening light fell softly on the old walls. Mira felt a steady calm in her heart. She knew that the house had many more secrets to share. She knew the journey was far from over. She walked home with peaceful steps, thinking about the hidden room she had discovered earlier and the locked chest that still waited for her. She felt excited for the next day. She believed that the house would reveal its story one layer at a time, and she was ready to discover it all. Mira woke up with a soft feeling of excitement. The more she worked on the house, the more she felt connected to it. It no longer felt like an abandoned place. It felt like a silent friend who was slowly opening its heart to her. She believed there were still many hidden stories waiting inside its walls. The letters she had found gave her a small window into the past, and she was sure more secrets rested quietly in the corners she had not yet touched. She reached the house early in the morning. The The sunlight made the old walls look less dull, and the air around the garden felt fresher than usual. Mira unlocked the door and entered the living room with quiet steps. She stood still for a moment, listening to the soft silence inside. The house felt peaceful, as if it was waiting for her. She decided to work on the living room floor that day. Some parts of the floor were uneven, and a few wooden planks sounded hollow when she stepped on them. She had noticed this earlier, but had not focused on it. Now she wanted to understand why some planks sounded different. Maybe the wood was damaged, or maybe something was underneath. She moved a small chair aside and knelt down to inspect the first plank. She tapped it gently with her fingers. It sounded normal. Then she tapped the next one. That one sounded slightly hollow. She tapped again to be sure. The sound was the same. Her heart gave a small jump. She felt that familiar pull of curiosity again. Myra fetched a small tool from her bag. It's a flat metal piece she used for lifting thin wooden edges. She slid it under the edge of the hollow plank and pushed gently. The plank moved a little, making a soft creaking sound. She tried again, applying more pressure, and finally the plank lifted up. She placed it aside carefully. What she saw underneath surprised her. There was an opening in the floor. It was not very deep, but it was clearly made by hand. The edges were smooth and straight, not broken or accidental. The space below was dark, so she used her phone's flashlight to look inside. At first she saw nothing but empty space. Then she noticed something small in the corner. It looked like a metal hinge. She reached in and touched it. It was connected to another wooden panel on the side of the opening. She pressed the panel gently, and it opened like a door. Behind it was a narrow passage, just big enough for a person to crawl through if they wanted. Mira stared at it with wide eyes. She never expected something like this in such a small house. Her breath slowly steadied. She felt no fear. She felt curiosity. She believed the house meant no harm to her. Everything she had found so far had been gentle. The letters spoke of love. The carved tables spoke of care. She believed whatever she would find next would simply add to the story. Mira used her phone. Light again, and looked inside the passage. The air smelled old, but clean. She could see the end of the passage only a few steps away. It led to a small wooden door, but this door was a different shade from the others in the house. It looked like it had been untouched for many years. After thinking for a moment, Myra placed her bag down and slowly crawled through the narrow space. The wooden floor above her creaked slightly, and her movements made soft echoes. She reached the small door and touched its surface. The wood was dry and cool. There was no lock on it, only a simple handle. She turned the handle gently. The door opened with a quiet sound, revealing a hidden room. The room was small but well made. Mira stepped inside and sat back on her knees for a moment, taking in the sight before her. The room had smooth wooden walls, a small lamp that looked like it belonged to a different time, and a faded rug spread across the floor. A tiny table stood near the far wall. On the table was a single notebook. The air inside the room felt oddly peaceful. It was not dusty or messy. It looked like someone had kept it in good condition long ago and then left it untouched. Mira felt a sense of respect wash over her. She felt like she was standing inside someone's private space, a room that held memories of someone she had not yet met. She moved toward the table and touched the notebook. The cover was worn, but still strong. She opened it carefully. On the first page, she saw a hand-drawn picture of the house. The drawing was detailed. It showed the house in its old beauty with clear windows, bright walls, and a clean garden full of flowers. It was a picture of how the house was meant to look at its best. Under the picture, a small note was written. It said that the house had a soul and should always stay full of warmth and kindness. Mira touched the words lightly with her finger. She felt a soft connection to whoever had written this. She turned the page. There were more drawings, each showing a different part of the house. One showed the kitchen with fruits in a bowl and a bright window. Another showed the bedroom with a vase of small flowers on the side table. Another drawing showed the garden full of life. Mira admired each drawing. The lines were smooth and filled with care. Whoever made these drawings loved the house deeply. She turned to the last section of the notebook. Here she found small paragraphs of writing. The handwriting looked similar to the letters she had found in the wooden box. It seemed to be Aaron's writing. He wrote about how he wanted the house to stay a place of peace. He wrote about building this hidden room as a quiet space for reading and thinking. He said that he wanted to protect the warmth of the house for as long as possible. Mira felt her heart grow warm. She imagined Aaron sitting here in this room, drawing pictures of the house and writing about his dreams. She imagined Leela coming in with tea and smiling quietly. This small hidden room suddenly felt full of life again. The silence inside it felt comforting rather than empty. Mira closed the notebook gently and placed it back on the table. She sat on the rug and looked around the room again. She tried to imagine how long it had been since anyone had opened this door. She tried to understand why the room was hidden. Maybe it was meant to be a private place. Maybe Arun and Lila wanted a space where they could keep their dreams safe. Mira stayed in the room for many minutes, feeling grateful for the discovery. She did not want to disturb anything unnecessarily, so she only touched the notebook and the lamp gently. Then she stood up and crawled back through the passage. Once she was back in the living room, she carefully closed the small panel and placed the floor plank back in its place. She sat down on the floor and took a deep breath. The discovery filled her heart with excitement, but she felt calm at the same time. She felt that she was slowly understanding the house and the people who lived here long ago. She believed there was still more to learn. She spent the rest of the day cleaning the edges of the living room and polishing the wooden walls. As she worked, her mind kept returning to the drawings. They gave her a clear picture of how the house once looked. She felt inspired to restore the house in a similar gentle way. She wanted to honor the people who had loved this place before her. She wanted to give the house a second chance, just as Arun had dreamed. In the afternoon, a few neighbors walked by again. One of them asked if she was still working on the house. Mira smiled politely and said, "Yes." They laughed lightly and shook their heads. They still believed the house would not change much. Mira did not respond to their doubt. She knew what she had found inside. She knew the truth of the house was deeper than what anyone else could see from the outside. The sun slowly began to set, casting warm colors across the garden. Mira cleaned her tools and looked around the living room once more. She felt proud of her progress. The house felt less heavy and more welcoming now. She believed she was moving in the right direction before leaving. She walked to the letters she had placed on the shelf and read a few lines again. This time the words felt more alive, especially after finding the hidden room. She felt like she was walking through the same memories that once belonged to Arun and Leela. She felt like she was helping the house. Remember its story? Mira locked the door and walked home with a peaceful smile. The house had shared something special with her today. She knew there were still many secrets hidden inside. She felt excited for the next morning. She believed that every new day would bring her closer to the full story of the house and the people who had loved it. The house was almost fully restored when the final week arrived. Every room had a new life. The walls were painted in soft colors. The windows were washed until the glass looked clear. Old furniture that Mira found in the storage was repaired and given a fresh look. The hidden room behind the cupboard was now the most interesting part of the house. People came just to see it. Still, Mira felt there was something missing, something she had not found yet. She sensed that the house still had one more story to reveal. She did not know what it was, but she could feel it every time she stepped into the hallway. One evening, when the sky turned soft and the air was cool, Mira sat on the steps outside the house. Ayan joined her with 2 cups of warm tea. "You look thoughtful," Ayan said gently. "I feel like the house is trying to tell me something more," Myra replied. "We fixed everything. Yet there is a feeling that a part of the story is still hidden." Ayan looked at the house. "Maybe you are right. Old places sometimes hold memories in ways we cannot see." They sat in silence for a minute. The soft evening breeze moved through the trees. The restored house stood proudly behind them. Myra suddenly stood up. "I want to check the hidden room again. Maybe I missed something." They both walked inside. The hallway was quiet, but not the same kind of quiet it once had. Before, the silence felt heavy. Now it felt gentle and warm. Mira moved the cupboard aside and stepped into the hidden room. She looked around carefully. The room had been cleaned many times. The chalk marks were still faintly visible, but most of the dust was gone. Papers were neatly placed on the shelf. The wooden window let in a small amount of evening light. Ayan stood near the door as Myra carefully examined each corner. She touched the walls, tapped the floor, and checked the shelves again. Everything seemed normal. Then she noticed something. A tiny space between two wooden planks under the shelf. It was so small that anyone could easily miss it. She bent down and touched it. The plank felt slightly loose, as if someone had opened it before. "Ayan, can you pass me the small toolbox?" she said. Ayan quickly brought it to her. Myra gently lifted the plank. It came out with soft resistance. Under it was a narrow, hidden compartment, small enough to hide only a few items. Inside was a small wooden box covered in fabric. Myra held the box carefully. It felt old, but well protected. She sat down on the floor and slowly opened it. Inside was a stack of folded papers, a tiny cloth bag, and a small metal key shaped like a leaf. "What is this?" Ayan asked with curiosity. Myra unfolded the first paper. It was a letter written in neat handwriting. The words were simple and calm. "To the person who finds this house in the future, this place is more than walls and wood. It holds dreams, ideas, and moments that helped me learn. If you are reading this, then you have chosen to care for it. I hope you continue the work I left behind and give this house a new story." The letter was signed with one name, Eimer. Felt a deep warmth in her chest. She had known about his dream through Rafi's stories, but reading his words felt different. It felt personal, real. It felt like Imran was speaking directly to her. She opened the second paper. It showed a rough plan of the house, but there was something different. One part of the drawing showed a small door outside the house. It was not a regular room. It was something separate. "What is that?" Ayan asked. Myra looked closely. "It looks like a small garden shed, but I have never seen it." Ayan nodded. "I have not seen any shed either. Maybe it is gone." Myra checked the third paper. It was a note describing the shed. It said the shed was a quiet place where Imran kept his tools and some personal items he did not want anyone to disturb. There was also a small sketch of the shed with a round window and a curved roof. "I think the shed still exists," Myra said. "Maybe it is hidden under plants or covered with wood." They went outside immediately. The sun was low, giving a warm color to the ground. Myra walked around the house slowly, following the old sketch in her mind. The drawing showed the shed on the right side of the house behind two tall trees. She reached the area. The ground was covered with thick bushes. A few stones were lying around. It did not look like anything important. Ayn helped her push aside the bushes. As they moved the branches, Myra noticed the edge of a wooden structure under the plants. She cleared it more. Soon, a small curved roof became visible. "It is here," Myra whispered with excitement. "This must be the shed." The door was covered in vines. Myra brushed them away. She held the small metal key she found in the box. Its leaf shape matched the lock on the door. She placed the key inside and turned it. The lock opened smoothly, as if waiting for years for this moment. She pushed the door gently. It opened with a soft sound. Inside, the shed was small, but full of warm energy. There were shelves with old tools, a small wooden table, and a stack of papers tied with string. The air smelled like old wood and memories. Everything inside seemed untouched. Myra stepped inside slowly, as if entering a quiet memory from the past. She placed her hand on the table. The wood felt smooth. She looked at the papers. Most were notes written by Imran about his studies. He wrote about sound movement, echo patterns, and air changes inside the house. The notes were simple and calm, showing his thoughtful nature. Ayan picked up a small wooden box in the corner. Inside were tiny samples of stones, leaves, and old metal pieces. Each item was labeled with careful handwriting. He studied everything around him, Ayan said with respect. He noticed things others never saw. Myra nodded. She felt a connection to Imran, even though she had never met him. She admired his patience, his dedication, and his quiet dream. Then she found a final letter inside a drawer. It was addressed to the future owner of the house. If you are reading this, then the house is in new hands. I hope you take care of it. Every wall has a purpose. Every room has a reason. Do not be afraid of what others say. A house with a dream needs a person with courage. Myra closed her eyes for a moment. She felt grateful. She felt honored. She now understood everything. The house was never strange. It was never something to fear. It was a place built on passion, learning, and hope. But people who did not understand had turned it into a mystery. She looked at Ayan. We were meant to find this. Ayan smiled. Yes, and you were meant to bring the house back. They packed the items carefully and brought them inside. Myra placed the letters, notes, and the small leaf key in the hidden room behind the cupboard. She wanted the room to stay as a memory of Imran's work, not as a forgotten corner. The villagers visited again the next day. Mira told them the full story. She showed them the shed, the hidden room, and the letters. She shared Imran's dream with them. For the first time, the villagers did not laugh. They listened. They understood. Many felt sorry that they never supported Imran when he was alive. Some felt inspired to finish things they once left behind. The house became a peaceful place for everyone. People came to read, learn, and reflect. Myra opened the doors every morning with pride. She kept the hidden room untouched, as a tribute to the man who once built dreams inside it. The villagers now said something new. Everyone laughed when she bought the ruined house. But when they walked inside, their hearts changed. Mira smiled every time she heard it. She had given the house a new beginning, and in return, the house had given her a new purpose. The house was no longer ruined. It was full of life, stories, and hope. And its final secret was no longer hidden. Morning light gently entered the small windows of the ruined house as Mira stood in the hallway with a calm but focused mind. She had barely slept after finding the strange hidden room behind the old cupboard. Her mind was filled with questions. Why was the room covered for years? What was the reason everyone stayed away from the house? And why did the villagers look pale the moment they entered and saw the faint marks on the floor? Mira walked toward the room again. She pushed the cupboard slightly to the side and stepped inside. The room was colder than the rest of the house. A thin layer of dust covered the floor, but the air felt still. Like someone had just left a few minutes ago, even though the room had been sealed for years. She moved closer to the strange marks on the ground. They were faint circles drawn with chalk. Some lines looked messy, almost as if someone tried to erase them in a hurry. She knelt down and touched the floor. The chalk broke into tiny white particles. Someone used this room for some kind of study or practice, she thought. Maybe her house was not only a house. Maybe someone used it for something more private in the past. As she stood up, she heard footsteps behind her. It was Ayan. He entered with a worried face. He held a notebook in his hand. You found something again? Ayan said. I was thinking about this place all night. I found these marks. And there are shelves on the wall. Someone used this room for something important, Myra replied. Ayan opened the notebook. It was the same notebook Mira saw on the first day she bought the house. The one she found behind the broken mirror. Inside were small notes written in fast handwriting. Ayan pointed at one page. Look here. It says the owner of the house was doing some experiments. Safe experiments. Something about studying sound and echo patterns inside rooms. Maybe he was a researcher or a teacher. Mira felt relieved. At least, it did not sound dangerous. But why did he hide the room? Ayan closed the notebook slowly. People hide things when they are afraid others will not understand. Mira nodded. She had seen this many times. People laugh at what they do not understand. Even she had faced laughter when she bought the ruined house. But now she felt something deeper. Maybe the owner had also gone through the same thing. They both returned to the main room. The villagers had left, but their frightened expressions still played in Myra's mind. She wanted answers. She wanted to bring the truth out. Not only for herself, but for the people who built this house long ago. She took a deep breath and looked around. This house is trying to say something. I can feel it. Every wall has a story, Ion smiled. Then let us listen. They spent hours cleaning the hidden room. Dust filled the air as they wiped the shelves, swept the floor, and opened the old wooden window that refused to move at first. Sunlight finally entered the room after many years. A warm feeling spread through the space. As if the house was relieved, someone finally opened it. They found old papers in a small box under the shelf. Most were blank, but one had a simple drawing of the same ruined house. Someone had drawn it with care. It showed the house when it was still new. The drawing also showed a garden outside, full of plants and small stones arranged in a neat pattern. Mira looked at the drawing and felt a strange connection. This was not just a house, she whispered. It was someone's dream. Later that afternoon, an older man from the village came to visit. His name was Raffi. He walked slowly with a wooden stick. He looked at Myra kindly. "I heard you found something inside," Raffi said. "I think I should tell you the real story of this place. You have earned the right to know." Mira invited him inside. Ion brought a chair for him. Raffi sat and looked around with soft eyes, filled with old memories. This house belonged to a man named Imran. Raffi began. He was gentle and quiet. He liked to study things that others never thought about. He studied sound, air, movement, and how small things changed when they were brought into new spaces. People in the village never understood him and made fun of him. But he loved this house. He rebuilt it many times with his own hands. Now Mira listened carefully. She felt respect for the unknown man who once lived here. One day, Raffi continued, Imran discovered something unusual inside the walls. Not dangerous. Just a place where the sound changed in a unique way. He turned that room into his study. But when he tried to show it to the villagers, they laughed. They thought he was wasting time. So hurt by their words, he closed the room and stopped his work. Mira felt a soft sadness. So he lived alone after that, as Raffi said. And when he passed away, the house slowly fell apart. People said it was strange, so no one wanted to buy it. Myra understood everything now. The fear people felt was not because the house was dangerous. It was because they remembered the stories they created long ago. And those stories became stronger than the truth. Raffi looked at her with a calm smile. But maybe you are different. You came here with courage. Maybe you will give this house a new life. After Raffi left, Mira walked outside. The evening sky was soft and peaceful. She looked at the house and felt something new rising inside her. She wanted to rebuild it completely. Not for herself only, but for the dream that once lived here. She began planning. She measured the halls, listed the rooms, and marked the places that needed repair. Ion helped her take notes. They both stood in the center of the hallway. "We can bring the house back to life," Mira said. Ion nodded. "Yes, and when people walk inside, they will no longer turn pale." That night, Mira entered the hidden room again. She placed a small lamp in the corner. For the first time, the room looked warm and alive. She sat on the wooden floor and imagined Imran sitting here years ago with his papers and tools. She imagined him working quietly while the rest of the world did not understand him. "Your dream will not be forgotten," she whispered with respect. The next morning, Mira started the biggest restoration work of her life. She cleaned every corridor. She repaired broken wood. She washed windows that had not seen sunlight for decades. The house slowly began to change. Walls that once looked tired now looked fresh. The dusty air turned cleaner. The rooms felt brighter. Ion brought new tools. Mira brought new energy. Together, they turned the ruined house into a home again. As they worked, they found more small clues about Imran's life. A wooden ruler. A small notebook filled with drawings. A paper with gentle handwriting saying, "Keep learning. Keep building." Those words became Myra's strength. By the end of the week, the villagers returned not with fear, but with curiosity. They stepped inside carefully. This time, instead of turning pale, their faces filled with surprise. The house looked beautiful, warm, peaceful. They looked at Mira with respect. "You brought this place back," one woman said. "We never thought anyone could do it." Mira smiled softly. The house just needed someone to listen. As the villagers walked through the rooms, Mira felt proud. She had not only restored walls, she had restored a story, a dream, a forgotten piece of someone's life. But she also knew something important. The house still had one more secret, something she had not yet understood, something that waited quietly in the hidden room behind the cupboard. Myra stood at the edge of the small-town road, looking at the house that everyone else avoided. The morning was calm and bright, but the house in front of her looked completely opposite of the peaceful weather. Its roof had missing tiles, the front door leaned to one side, and the windows looked tired and dusty. The garden had dry grass and wild plants that had grown in every direction, as if no one had touched them for many years. Most people saw only a broken place, but Myra saw something different. She saw a space that still held a soft, quiet charm under all the dust. It was the charm of something forgotten that wished to be remembered again. Mira had always been someone who found beauty in old things. She liked objects that had a story behind them. When she first saw the ruined house from a distance, she felt a strange, peaceful pull toward it. She did not know why. She could not explain it to anyone, but it felt like the house was calling for someone who cared enough to give it a chance. Many people in town said the house had no value. They said it was a waste of time to even look at it, but Myra did not share their thoughts. When the news spread that she had bought the house, people around the town started to laugh. Some laughed openly, and some did it quietly behind her back. They said she made a foolish choice. They joked that she had just bought a pile of broken walls. Some even said she would regret it before the first week ended. Mira heard all these comments, but she did not respond with anger or hurt. She simply kept her steady smile and continued walking toward the house with a gentle confidence that came from her heart. Her family and friends also tried to change her decision. They told her that the house was too damaged to fix. They said she could find a better place for the same amount of money. Her close friend Rena asked her many times if she was sure. But Mira remained calm. She believed in her choice. She felt that this house needed her, and she needed something meaningful to work on. She wanted a fresh start in life, and she felt this house would give her that chance. She thanked everyone for their concern, but stayed firm in her plan. The day she received the keys, she walked toward the house with slow steps and a hopeful heart. As she reached the front door, she paused for a moment. The house looked silent, as if it was waiting for her to take the first step inside. She pushed the old door gently. It opened with a soft sound that echoed through the empty space inside. When Myra stepped into the living room, a cloud of dust rose into the air. Sunlight entered through small gaps in the wooden windows and formed thin lines of light across the room. There were spider webs in corners, and the floor had an uneven surface in many places. The walls had faded paint, and the air smelled old, but none of this scared or discouraged her. She felt like she had walked into a place that wanted a new life, and she wanted to be the person who gave it that life. She opened all the windows one by one. Fresh air slowly replaced the old musty smell. Then she stepped into the kitchen. It was small and dark, with old cabinets and a broken sink. She touched the wooden counter and imagined how it would look clean and polished. She liked dreaming about possibilities. She knew she could turn this kitchen into something warm and bright with time. The hallway led to 2 bedrooms. The first bedroom was filled with dust-covered furniture. Small wooden beds stood in one corner, and an old table was placed near the window. Sheets that once were white had now turned a pale gray. The second bedroom was almost empty except for a small wooden chest in the middle of the room. Myra bent down and tried to open it, but it was locked. She decided to check it again later. After exploring the rooms, she stepped outside to the garden. It was the part of the house that looked the wildest. Grass had grown tall, and dry leaves were scattered everywhere. The fence around the garden was broken in some places. There was an old tree in one corner with branches heavy with leaves. Mira felt that the tree was still strong, even if everything around it looked weak. She smiled at the thought and decided she would clean the garden first. Believed the garden would give the whole house a fresh beginning. The sun was high in the sky when she returned to the living room and sat down on the dusty floor. For a moment, she let herself imagine the future. She saw the house with bright walls, clean rooms, and soft colors. She imagined fresh flowers in the garden and warm sunlight coming through the windows. She imagined a small dining table where she could sit with friends and talk about life. The picture brought comfort to her heart. She felt a gentle hope rising inside her. She knew the journey would be long and filled with hard work, but she was ready. By afternoon, the sound of footsteps came from the front yard. Mira looked out the window and saw 3 neighbors. They had curious expressions and small, amused smiles on their faces. They waved at her, and she waved back politely. They asked if they could take a look inside. Mira welcomed them with a friendly smile. She did not think anything negative about their laughter. She believed that people laughed only because they could not see what she saw. The neighbors stepped inside and looked around. Their amused smiles grew wider as they saw the dusty floors, broken corners, and faded walls. One of them whispered something to another, and they both tried not to laugh loudly. Mira noticed it but kept her calm. She listened as one of the neighbors said that the house would take years to repair. Another said that even if she worked day and night, she might still fail. They spoke lightly, not to hurt her, but their words were filled with disbelief. Mira explained that she planned to clean the house slowly and fix it step by step. They nodded politely, but their eyes showed doubt. After a short while, they left with friendly waves. When they were gone, Mira took a deep breath. She did not feel sad or discouraged. She felt stronger. She believed that the best things often began with doubt and slow steps. She was determined to bring her vision to life. She began cleaning the house that same day. She swept the floors, dusted the windows, and moved the old furniture aside. Each hour she spent inside made her more connected to the place. With each step, she felt the house becoming a little lighter. The dust no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a layer of history that she was gently uncovering. By evening, she was tired, but content. She stood in the center of the living room and looked around. The room still looked old and worn, but it also felt more open. The air smelled fresher. The light entering the windows felt softer. Mira felt proud of the small progress she had made. She believed that slow progress was still progress. As the sun began to set, Mira walked outside and stood on the front porch. She watched the warm golden light fall across the old walls. For a moment, the house looked peaceful, almost beautiful in its quiet way. She felt her heart warm. She whispered softly that she would take care of it. She would give it a new life. She would give it the love it had missed for many years. She locked the door and walked home with calm steps. Her clothes were dusty and her hands were tired, but her heart felt light. She knew the real journey was just beginning. She felt excited for the next day and the day after that. She did not fear the work. She did not fear the doubts of others. She only cared about the quiet feeling she had the moment she first saw the house. She believed that everything meaningful required patience, care, and time. She believed that the ruined house would one day stand tall again. And she believed that this journey would change not only the house, but also her own life.